Hello everyone, welcome to the lecture. Welcome to another lecture of the series of molecular biology. So today we will be discussing on a very relevant topic in terms of molecular biology or in terms of the lab aspects in the and whatever the experiments that we are doing in terms of molecular biology or the isolations of DNA and then having a substantial amount of DNA. The path breaking discovery that I always tell to my student is that designing and implementation of PCR. The polymerase chain reaction, the thermocycler, that's what we'll be discussing today. What is the basic principle of PCR? And along with PCR, we'll be discussing is two different types, that is reverse transcriptase PCR as well as the real-time PCR. Everybody is now, in today's scenario, everybody has that word. The word is being heard every time in the pandemic, whether you want to travel somewhere, whether you are going for any diagnosis part of the viral infection, the term is RT-PCR. So what is RT-PCR? What is real-time PCR? So that will be the thing that we'll be discussing in this particular lecture, and I hope by the end of the lecture you will be able to understand the complete aspects of PCR and the real-time PCR, what are CT values, how this real-time PCR is used in determining the infection load. We can correlate with any kind of pathogen, whether we are a bacterial pathogen or we are talking about in terms of viral load. So we'll be completely understanding each and every aspect of these particular techniques. So let's begin with very very basic PCR properties. So what is polymerase chain reaction? So when we are talking about polymerase chain reaction, you have to understand that yes, we have a double strand DNA. Now my job is to amplify that double strand DNA, and by amplify I meant I have to increase the number of that double strand DNA. So the new DNA which is being formed, the amplicons that are being formed should be the exact replica of the parent double strand DNA, and that particular process of in vitro amplification is called as PCR. So see, although PCR is used for DNA amplification, prior to PCR implementation, how the scientific community was able to amplify the DNA. They were using the expression vector, the expression on the cells, the overexpression in the cells, and that was the only source that was giving us the output of multiple copies of a same DNA molecule. And the limit was that if you are using a certain expression cell, then there is a limit into which it can go for amplification. But when we are talking about in vitro, we are going way ahead in forming the copies. So what was the timeline, or let's discuss how this particular PCR came into existence. Then in 1966, Thomas Brock first of all determined an organism called as Thermus aquaticus, the bacteria which is available in hot springs. And when we're talking about availability in hot springs, that means it is present in very high temperatures. Now, if it is present in very high temperature, that means it is thermostable. There is no effect of that high temperature on its growth. If there is no effect on its growth, then you should be able to understand that this bacteria would be dividing also. And if it is dividing, then means it is replicating its own DNA. So there is a DNA replication process that is happening at that high temperature. Now, what they did, what was done, the enzymes that are required for DNA replication, that is polymerase, the DNA polymerase. Now that enzyme under normal prokaryotic and eukaryotic normal scenario, that enzyme gets denatured at such a high temperature. But now we have a very thermostable model system. We can isolate the enzyme from this particular organism that will be thermostable, and we can implement it in a technique which can be used for amplification of DNA, and that technique itself is dependent on very high temperature, so we need a thermostable enzyme. So in 1983, Kyrmos postulated the concept of PCR, for which he was awarded a Nobel Prize 10 years after his postulation. In 1985, Psyche published the first application of PCR in terms of identifying the beta globin genes, and then later on in the same year, the Satis Corp scientists isolated the enzyme that is Taq polymerase enzyme that is Taq polymerase, which is isolated from Thermus aquaticus. Now, this particular isolation of enzyme, in my opinion, after Chiron-Mills was the path-breaking discovery, which actually led to the revolutionizing implementation of bioinstrumentation and designing of complete PCR. Why? Because now we have a now we are having we have managed to discover an enzyme which is highly thermostable. So in after 1985, that revolutionized term, and then later on, the remaining is history. The remaining is history. Since 1985, every lab is using this particular enzyme for amplifying the DNA. So what actually is happening in PCR? What are the reaction components? What is the principle? Let's go ahead. See, whenever you want to amplify a double-strand DNA, what you need that double-strand DNA, of course. What else you need? You need the enzyme which will be replicating this particular DNA, that is DNA polymerase, in this case Taq polymerase. Then none of the DNA dependent DNA polymerase is able to synthesize the strand, daughter strand from scratch. They requires primer. So a short stretch of primer is also required. So a set of primer with, in form of forward and reverse primer for both the strands is required. Then we require the raw material for synthesizing the DNA, right? We require DNTPs because you are going for in vitro technique. So you require all the 4 DNPs, DATP, CTP, DGTP, and DTP. Apart from this, you require the factor that is required for that particular enzyme, that is magnesium ion, and the buffers that will maintain the pH of this particular reaction. So what is happening? See, the size of the template target DNA that can be amplified using this particular PCR can reach up to 3 kilobase pairs. So what we are doing, we are targeting the specific regions of the target DNA by using primers, short oligonucleotide primers. Now, 2 primers are required. One is forward and the other is reverse. The forward is always in the direction of 5 prime. 3 primer is the reverse. We are talking about the opposite end. So these primers are always synthetically produced. They are designed based on the target gene, what you want to target. So if you are not aware of the target sequence, then the general primers are also designed depending upon its GC content and the TM, taking into consideration the melting temperature, so that a relatively stable binding of primer to this target sequence can be achieved. And in fact, this particular primer designing is a complete lecture in itself. So we perhaps in the later sections we'll be talking about this particular primer designing also. But for now, understand that there is a short stretch of oligonucleotide which is getting attached to the target DNA, target double-strand DNA. Now, these 2 primers ideally should not be complementary to each other. If they are complementary to each other, you will be seeing the PCR artifact. A double-strand PCR is a double-strand bands are being seen after the completion of the PCR. So that PCR, that RNA artifact should not be appearing. So you have to take care that there should be no complementary. And apart from the complementary region, you have to take care that the percentage GC content that you are targeting in your primer should be in the range of 40 to 60%, because it gives you a better annealing. It gives you a very high better annealing. And the melting temperature that we are talking about, that melting temperature should always be considered, should always be calculated, and then only you can use these primers in PCR. Why? Because it's a temperature dependent thermocyclization. So you need to know the melting temperature of these primers. And apart from melting temperature also, you should not take the repetitive sequences. The repeat should not be there in the primers. Then when we are talking about the enzyme, see this particular enzyme, that is Taq polymerase, isolated from Thermus aquaticus. Or see, these days we use obviously the recombinant thermostable polymerases, or we are going for PFU polymerase or Wnt polymerase if we are using in the reaction. So there are different enzymes today that are present as thermostable, which are being shown to be very proficient, very efficient compared to Taq polymerase, highly efficient also in carrying out the amplification. So although we are talking about the Taq polymers in this particular lecture because it forms a basis and it's the most common enzyme that is being used in PCR. So this particular Taq polymerase is stable up to 95 degrees Celsius. If you raise the temperature till 95 degrees Celsius, it will not have any kind of artifacts or any kind of denaturation. It will carry on its activity. So apart from the thermostability, it has very high processivity. Also, it has a normal exonuclease activity that we had talked about in DNA polymerases. It has 5' to 3' exonuclease activity. Of course, there is no proofreading activity associated with this particular enzyme. So when we are talking about the PCR cycle, it is divided into three different stages. First and foremost, you have to open up your double strand DNA, and that open up is a temperature dependent. Is temperature dependent. So you are heating the complete solution to 95 degrees Celsius. When it reaches the 95 degrees Celsius, the double strand is now opened into single strands. Is now opened into single strands. Now, once the single strands are open, then what you need to target the portion against which you have the primers. So you have to attach the primers. Now the primers will go and bind to the single strand sequence. Now these primers, binding of primers to the single strand DNA sequences is called as annealing. And then from 95 degrees Celsius, the temperature is lowered. And primers are allowed to anneal. The annealing temperature can be around 54 degrees Celsius. And then again the temperature is raised. Why it is raised? Because that temperature will favor the DNA polymerase catalytic activity, and based on the primer, that particular Taq polymerase will synthesize the complementary nucleotide, and that is the in nutshell. After completion, will give you the two double strand DNA molecules from a single double strand DNA, and that completes one cycle. After one cycle, you have only two molecules of DNA. And in PCR, we go up to 30 cycles. So from 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16, 16 to 32, 32 to 64, and so on. So by the end of 30 cycles, how many DNA molecules we will be having, you can easily count. The synthesis will be around 2 raised to power n minus 1, and that is n, where it determines the number of cycle. So if the question comes, how many strand of DNA molecules are synthesized after, say, 5 cycles? So what you will be saying, 2 raised to power 5, 2 raised to power 5, right? And minus 1 the template molecule, so the newly synthesized DNA molecule is available to you. So that is the thing that one should remember, that this just the first cycle, and then there are subsequent cycles to be formed, and henceforth you will be seeing that after 30 cycles, what you have in your hand. After 30 cycles, what you have in your hand, it's almost a billion. It's almost greater than billion copies of DNA that you have. So you have reached to a substantial amount of DNA where you can work on which you can work on. You can apply multiple tests, and that's the beauty of this particular PCR, that it goes for exponential amplification. Fine. So when we are talking about the thermocycle or the basic PCR, what is this profile, how these three stages are carried about, and how the 30 cycles are going about. So when you will be seeing a PCR machine, you can see that we have to enter the command, and before when we are entering the command, we have to take care of certain things. What are those certain things? Although we have studied the cycle, we have clearly studied the cycle, that this is the cycle, step 1, step 2, step 3. Now depending upon lab to lab, there are multiple programs that can be applied. I mean, like in my lab, I prefer on my standard settings, and in other lab they might be preferring other settings. But when we are talking about general, I always prefer that for the cycle, the step 1, that is denaturation, should be carried out to 40 seconds under my settings, and then annealing can be taken care for 40 seconds, and then elongation is taken care for a minute. Whereas some people are going for 30 and 40 seconds, other people are going for longer duration of time. So these cycles, although the temperature is constant, but the time span you can standardize in your lab. If you are not aware of anything, you can easily go for 30 and 40 seconds. You will still be seeing the amplification. If the amplification is less, you can go for longer duration of time. But what I want to narrate you is this, that before this step, we always put 5 minutes of denaturation at 95 degrees Celsius, so that I want to ensure that immediately my complete DNA should be denatured and it should be available for the cycle to go ahead. And then when the complete 30 cycles are over, then also I give in a prolonged incubation of 3 to 4 minutes at the same temperature, so that I am making sure that no further amplification is carried out. So that is all about the temperature profile of that particular part. Let's switch our focus to RT-PCR, next type, that is reverse transcriptase PCR. Now we know what is reverse transcription. It's the opposite of central dogma when we are talking about the DNA, from DNA the synthesis of RNA, mRNA. Now reverse transcription is from mRNA, a DNA molecule is synthesized, and that is called as reverse transcription. That is called as reverse transcription. And the real-time monitoring, if you are going for real-time monitoring of amplification, that is called as real-time PCR. So this particular reverse transcriptase PCR is used when you are much more focused on you are having an RNA sample and you want to amplify the DNA molecule from that corresponding RNA molecule. So what you do, you have mRNA, which is having a poly A tail. You will synthesize that primer which will be attaching to it. Now there will be a single primer. There will not be any multiple primers. Why you are giving this primer? Because you want to synthesize the first complementary strand. You want to synthesize the first complementary strand, and the enzyme what you use is reverse transcriptase. The recombinant reverse transcriptase is also available. Once you have the complementary DNA, then that particular DNA molecule will be used to as a template for getting multiple amplicons, and that is how from an RNA molecule we get multiple DNA molecules, and that is the basic principle. What you need RNA, you need primer, you need DNA polymerase also, and additionally you will add reverse transcriptase and all the buffer agents, so that if you are adding both the enzymes in a single step and then you are leaving it to form to see the results on later on, that is called as one step. Whereas we prefer to go for two step, because first of all we are going with the non-specific primers in order to amplify the DNA. Once the DNA is amplified, no, not amplified, once the DNA is formed, once the reverse transcription is happened, then we use the set of specific primers to target our gene by normal PCR, and that is called as two-step PCR. So that is the difference between the single step and two-step PCR, and that is all about reverse transcription. Then the next part, that is real-time PCR, that one should always remember. What is real-time PCR? So see, we had understood the normal polymerase chain reaction. What is real-time? If there is a setup in which you can see visually or under live settings that how many copies of DNA are being made as the time progressed in real time, and that particular setting is called as real-time PCR. What we have done, we have a thermocycler, we have specialized a thermocycler, and then we have changed the detection system. We have added the fluorescence part in this particular component, and then that particular fluorescence is added in such a way that it will give us the detection based on every DNA molecule being formed. And then we have automated it with the computer system, with our system workstations, and then in that workstation I am seeing the increase in fluorescence, which is directly correlated with the increase in copy number of DNA, increase in the amplicons, and that particular visualization is called as real-time PCR. So when we are talking about real-time PCR, why it has become so popular, or why it's considered as cornerstone of molecular biology? See, it's used in multiple settings. If I want to know the expression of a certain gene, whether the gene is getting expressed and producing mRNA, so I'll directly go for real-time PCR. I will check the expression profile of that, but I will check the number of mRNA molecules or check the expression profile using real-time PCR, and we'll see whether that particular gene is active or not, and if it is active, whether the activeness is very high or is highly expressive, or it's low, expression is low. Or not even that, if I'm going for drug designing, if for drug research, if in response to my drug, whether the expression of certain protein, certain genes is getting elevated, or whether there is an inhibition or suppression of in the expression of certain genes, that also I can monitor with this particular real-time PCR, and that we do routinely in our labs. And then not even that, the most popular scenario these days, that is disease diagnosis. We are already listening from past 2 years that yes, you have to take out that RT-PCR report if you are going for any detection test of viral pathogen. So identifying whether the sample contains a viral pathogen or a bacterial pathogen, that can also be done with the help of RT-PCR. All you need is a specific set of primers. If I have a specific set of primer which is targeting Mycobacterium tuberculosis, then in the blood sample I can use those primers to see whether the sample is infected by that pathogen. All I need is to isolate the DNA. I will isolate the DNA and I'll put the primer, I'll go for PCR. If I see any amplification, that means the template was present and the sample is infected with Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And the same is with other viral pathogens also, or bacterial pathogens, as is in the case of corona. And secondly, we can also determine what is the load of the pathogen. Why? Because if I am using suppose 10 copies of template, I'll be getting an amplification. And if I'm using 100 copies of template, then the last point which was to be achieved in 30 minutes is now achieved in 20 minutes. So you see, depending upon the initial load of pathogen or initial availability of the pathogenic DNA, initial availability of the pathogenic DNA, the time to attain the last cycle amplification is now reduced, and that determines the that determines the pathogenic load. And that's also what we'll be discussing in this particular section. And not even that, it is being used in food testing for percent GMO foods. It is being regularly being used in animal plant breeding. Here I'm just giving you an example of the utilization in terms of checking the expression of BRCA1, BRCA2 genes, which are responsible and shown to be associated with the breast cancer and other types of tumors also. So apart from that, if you're talking about the treatment scenario, then this real-time PCR has been regularly used to direct measure the amount of virus that is present, or virus or the load of virus, to categorize the individuals under asymptomatic, symptomatic, mild, severe. So depending upon the viral load, you can decipher under which category you want to put the patients. So when we are talking about understanding this particular virus, let us go with a very simple exercise. Suppose let's imagine I have this particular Eppendorf, and I had already performed 25 cycles. So after 25 cycles, this is what I have in my hand. And suppose you are having a certain scenario. So after 25 cycles, what you will be having? You will be having somewhere around 10 lakh copies. If you're talking about 24 cycles, you will be having somewhere around 5 lakh. At 25, you are having 10 lakh. And suppose at 26, what will be having? You will be doubling the amount, right? So that is how the complete PCR is going. So what is happening at 25? If my graph is going in exponential manner, then at 26 it will go ahead, and then subsequently 27, 28, 29, it will keep on rising. From 10 lakh, I'll be going to 20, and then from 20 to 40, 40 to 80, and then so on. And by the end of 20, so let's say 26 cycle, what I have 20 lakh. By the end of 200 cycles, what I'll be having that test about 35 tons of DNA, which is sufficient enough, which is actually equivalent to the weight of 10 billion planets of the size of Earth. So that is how exponential growth is there. But that is not what we are discussing. What we want to show you is that when this particular exponential form is going ahead, then what is happening? The concentration of DNA is increasing, but you have the primer that is responsible for this extension. Now after 30 cycles, what we observe, that primer's accessibility to its complementary region is getting low. Therefore, the exponential growth declines, and it goes to stagnancy, because it is very hard to found the primers and the nucleotides. And that's why we are providing the amount of raw material in optimum condition. So let us imagine that you started with 4 times more the template DNA as I was having. Suppose I was having a single copy. That time you had a 4 copy to start with. If I am having 100 copies, you are having 400 copies to start with this particular reaction. So what is happening? So if you are 4 times more, you are having 4 times more template compared to me, then after 25 cycle, I'll be having 10 lakh copies, but you will be having 40 lakh copies, right? So what will be having after 30? You will be having 4 times higher. So if I set a bar, that my version of real-time PCR is red line, and your version of real-time PCR is actually shaded line, the green line or blue line, what you can see. So I went ahead and I saw the amplification of me getting visualized at much later stage. After 25th cycle, I am getting a certain exponential expression, which of course went to saturation. But in your case, since you are having more amount of template DNA as 4 times higher than compared to me, so you had the amplification at 22. You had the amplification at 23 compared to the same point what I had. So what is there? You reached the saturation much earlier compared to me. Much earlier compared to me. And my friends, this is what we are talking about, the CT values. These are called as CT values. The cycle number where the amplification crosses the threshold, and this CT value determines what is the viral load, what is the pathogen load that this value, CT value, is determining to you. So if I have two samples, one is severely affected, it contains high viral load, another one is low affected, contains low viral load. So if I put both of them to RT-PCR, what I'll see that the amplification of severe load has much lower CT value, and it has reached to amplification at a faster time compared to the other one which has low viral load. And this is why we say lower the CT value, higher is the concentration of pathogen. Higher is the concentration of pathogen. So that is how we say that is how the CT value is determined. That is how the CT value is determined. And based on this particular CT value, you can identify actual concentration. You can extrapolate. How? Suppose I am doing lab, I am working in the diagnosis of coronavirus. So what I am doing, I set up an initial reaction. I took 6 different groups and I added, suppose 500 viral particles, then 1000 viral particles, then 5,000, then 10,000, and so on. And I subjected each group to the RT-PCR and I observed the graph. Based on the graph, I'll be having the CT values. So now what can I do? I can plot a graph. How I can plot a graph? See, I got the CT values and I know how much number of viral particle I added at the start of my experiment. So a graph is plotted. Since it's an exponential growth, so you cannot plot an exponential graph. If you want to reduce the exponential graph into a straight line, then you got to take the log. Now what we do, we take the log of copy number. That how many copy number of that particular DNA is present, and we plot it with CT value, and we get a straight line of a standard. Now once we get the straight line and the equation, and then we attain a sample. Now when the sample is given to us, we put it under RT-PCR, and then we get the CT value if the patient is infected. And then we put that CT value in this particular equation, and we see if the CT value is 25, then the viral load is this much. This is the copy number, or this is the infection that will be happening. So if you are having 100 copies of 200 base pair gene, that is gene is equivalent to just 20 attograms. I am talking about of DNA. So if you have 100 copies of 200 base pairs, the weight will be equal to roughly around 10⁻17 gram of DNA. So that is happening. Now in real time, when I showed you, this particular graph will be appearing. How this graph is appearing? This is appearing because of the fluorescence. Now the real-time system is attached with a fluorescence detector that will see the fluorescence and will keep on giving you the increment in the amplicon. And for that we use different fluorophores. Now fluorescence is not a new thing. It's the shift in the wavelength while the electron is coming back from excited state to the ground state. And that shift in wavelength, that increase in the wavelength compared to the absorbing wavelength, the emission wavelength is higher, and it falls in the region of Vibgyor, the visible range, which is appearing in the form of light, and that phenomenon is called as fluorescence. So we are using those dyes, those fluorochromes that can attach to the DNA molecule. So if I have one molecule right now, a single dye will be attached. If I have two molecules, two dyes will be attaching. If I have 3 lakh molecules, 3 lakh dyes will be attaching. So what is happening? Initially, the dye was giving low signal. Then after attachment, signal increases. After attachment, signal keeps on increasing. So we use those dyes which after binding to the DNA gives you a higher fluorescence. gives you a higher fluorescence, and such dye is ethidium bromide, which gives you orange color fluorescence after binding to the after intercalating with the DNA. After intercalating with the DNA, or very commonly what we use in our lab is cybergreen that is binding to the major groove, and after binding to the major groove, its intensity increases, the fluorescence increases. And then apart from cybergreen, we also use multiple probes. Now this probe is what, see, there is an oligonucleotide which is bound with a reporter, which is actually the fluorescence fluorochrome, and there is a quencher. So this until the point where this particular probe is intact, there will be no fluorescence. The moment tag polymerase comes in contact with the probe, it cleaves it off. The moment it cleaves it, now the quencher is not able to suppress the fluorescence of the reporter, and we see the fluorescence, and we will be seeing the fluorescence, and that is how the complete aspect is visualized when we're talking about your RT-PCR. So again, as there's a practice, we should summarize it with our MCQs for your sake, so that it brushes up all your memory what we have read so far in this particular lecture. So once you go through this lecture, you will be able to answer these MCQs, like denaturation happening is what temperature, which of the following is the basic requirement of the PCR reaction, which of the following is the first and the most important step. So all these reactions will be all these questions will be very helpful for you understanding, and for your further reading I have given you these particular links. You can go ahead, you can understand the concept of PCR by using these links. So students, that is all in this lecture. I hope the summary and the brief narration was very fruitful to you. Please go through the further reading links so that you can have a clear cut understanding of the topic, and with the promise that we will meet again in another lecture of the same series. It's goodbye from my side for now. We'll meet again. Till then, take care, stay safe, and wish you a very happy learning.